Thank you everyone for joining us virtually this afternoon. We are joined by Toronto FC President Bill Manning and General Manager Ali Curtis. We will begin with Bill before we open the floor to questions. And if you do have any questions, please use the raise hand function on your screen and we'll get around to it. Go ahead, Bill.
Hey, thank you, everyone, for showing up on short notice. You read the news earlier today. We relieved Chris of his head coaching duties. Very difficult times, and Chris is a very good man. So it was a very difficult conversation for Ali and I. But we need to move forward, and we'll take any questions you have in that regard.
Thank you, Bill. We'll begin with Neil Davidson of the Canadian Press.
Bill, Ali, 6 months ago when Chris was hired, there was much enthusiasm. He was described as the right fit to build upon the foundation that has been established at TFC. Clearly, these have been unusual times on and off the field, but what happened to break this marriage up?
Want me to take it?
Listen, I'll chime in. It's been a difficult 18 months, and particularly it's been a difficult the last 6 months. And as you referenced, Neil, since Chris took over, it's been an unbelievable time having to move the team to Orlando, and all the different variables that the club has had to manage through on the field and off the field. With that being said, the results drive our business in so many ways, and in this sense, our results weren't there, and we felt we needed to go in a different direction.
We'll head next to Steve Buffery.
Beezer?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. There's been some talk the last week or two that perhaps Chris had lost his players. In some ways, they maybe stopped playing at 100% for him. Did you start to see some of that? And was that part of the reason why you pulled the trigger here?
Okay, I think, and I had this conversation with Ali last night, the way we have been losing, especially since returning from the 3-week break, has been very difficult to watch. And when you see a team concede like we did yesterday, we just saw no way back outside of making the coaching change. And so whether it's losing the locker room, losing players, this and that, I'll let you all decide. But the decision we made is that we were not advancing with Chris as our head coach right now, and I think I saw the term "something had to give," and we needed to make that decision, and we have to look forward because the results of late have been unacceptable and not good enough, and that is goes to every player and the coaching staff and the support staff and on up to us.
We'll go next to Mike Leach, 680 News.
Thanks very much, Nick. Guys, and maybe this is more for Ali. You were the guys that were responsible for bringing in Chris. Clearly a swing and a miss on that. Why should the players, why should the fans believe that you guys are the right guys to see this team forward and make the decision on who will be the next manager for this club?
I think that there is a collective responsibility that we all must share. With that being said, I bear a lot of responsibility for the team's poor results. I think what's most important is that we have to look forward. We have to find a way, and we have to find solutions. And, with all decisions that we make for the club, within the club, that have impact outside of the club, we do it with a lot of hard work, a lot of analysis, a lot of collective opinions. We make a decision and we move forward, and it's anticipated that those decisions work out the way that we project them to work out. Sometimes they don't. the work is always there. The analysis is there. And the confidence is there as well. Confidence in our work ethic and our experience, and how we go about our, our business. This year's been a real challenge. It's been really, really difficult. Chris is a good person. He's a good coach, but the results drive our business in so many ways, which drove this decision. In particular, you saw the result last night. So it's important that we assess where we are, where we're going, and move forward in a positive way. That's what our club demands. It's what our fans demand. It's what our city demands. And so, we're moving forward.
Yeah. And Mike, I think it's a very good question, very valid question. This is my 16th season in Major League Soccer. I've been to 5 MLS Cups. I've been to 7 conference finals, 12 playoffs, missed the playoffs only 3 times. I've worked with 4 general managers, 4 head coaches. I know what a winning team looks like. I know what a championship team looks like. As this season progressed, you could tell that this did not have the makings of a championship team and of a winning team right now. And, sometimes being a leader, you need to know when to make a change. And that's when this, for me, especially after last night's game, it was clear as day that we needed to make this change. It's unfortunate. Chris Armas is a very good man. But we have to win, and our players, are going to demand from us. If they're not playing for Chris, they're going to demand for us, everything we have to put them in the best environment to win. And so this will be a step towards that, and we will again compete for championships. And that is what drives us every day. But we had to challenge ourselves that this was not going in the right direction. We needed to make that change and get it back to where some of my teams in the past have been, where you do compete for championships.
Thank you, Mike. We'll head next to Joshua Cloak from The Athletic.
Bill, you talk about this being, you talk about wanting to win championships, and you talk about knowing what championship teams look like. Given that there were no significant offseason additions, and given that particularly at center back, there's serious work to be done, do you guys believe you set Chris Armas up for success with this roster that you've constructed?
Yes, I think give it Ollie. Look, we had 9 players that were on the 2017 MLS Cup winning team. And then another 9 players that joined us in 2019 for the MLS Cup finalists, 18 players on our current roster. We have another 9 players from our academy who are homegrowns, came up through our system. The players that we added this year, in Jefferson and Kamar, Dom Dwyer, we thought would add a little punch. Some of them have come late. And then, you have Achara, who was injured, who was a draft pick last year. So it is a team that knows what winning looks like. And, when Chris took over, we felt that the changeover of the coaching staff, the performance staff, was a lot. And to combine that with changing over a roster would also be a lot. And, I think what happened here is a system, a style of play that had been in place for a long time with the current roster has had a very difficult time changing to a new coaching staff and a new style of play. And so obviously you can look back in hindsight, but we are expecting this roster to play better than they are. And so we're going to challenge whoever comes in to provide that spark for this group of players who do know what it takes to win. And so that's kind of my take on it, Ollie.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is I think it's unfair to point at one variable as the reason that we are where we are. Like most things, it's multidimensional, and it's usually a byproduct of a couple different things. And so, you look at you can look at our roster. We can look at the different impact that COVID has had. We haven't played one game in Canada, but at the end of the day, we're in a results-oriented business, and we have to find solutions based on where we are in our environment and what we need to do and what we have to set out to do. So it's a difficult moment, but like Bill mentioned before, we have to move forward. It's very important. We feel good about the tools and the players that we have, but at the end of the day, we have to take a hard look at ourselves in every facet of our club so that we can move forward in a positive way and so that we can achieve the goals that we set out for ourselves.
We'll head next to John Molinaro at TFC Republic.
Thank you, Nick. Actually, I had a two-part question, if I may. Was it just Chris that was let go? Was it any other member of the coaching staff? And I guess the second part would be who now becomes the new coach? Has an interim coach been named? What's that process sort of look like?
Just Chris was let go earlier today, and Javier Perez will take the team for Wednesday.
Thank you, John. We'll go next to James Grossley.
Thanks, Nick. The last 6 to 8 weeks have sort of been a search for answers, and whether it's formation, whether it's tactics, whether it's personnel. I'm wondering what your assessments are on what has ailed the team, and is a new coach the answer to that question we've all been asking?
Well, defensively, we have been leaking goals, and we've been finding ways to lose. You look at the Nashville game, we're up 2-1. We come back against Orlando, tie it 2-2, and we found a way to lose by giving up a third goal in the 82nd minute, I believe. You can't win when you're conceding 2+3 goals a game. And so certainly we have to shore things up defensively. That to me is the most important thing. The old saying, defense wins championships. And if you look at TFC over the last, 5-6 seasons, we've actually been very tough defensively, with the exception of 2018 when we had some injuries, and we know that season we didn't make the playoffs. But even last year, I think we had 5th best goals against average in the league. We were tough to score on. And so that right now collectively, and it's not just the 4 or 5 or 3 defenders that we have out there, it is collective as a team. And that's something we're going to challenge whoever is taking on our head coaching duties to strengthen us defensively, because it's got to start with that.
We'll head next to Vic Router of TSN.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Did either of you, having watched what was happening, did either of you get in Coach Armas's ear and say, Coach, you got to change. You've got to change what you want to do here? And if you did he obviously he didn't listen. Did he say no, he won't?
I think we've always had open conversations with Chris about the team and about what's going on and about the results. Anytime something is not working, you look to change and not to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And so, that there was ongoing dialogue with Chris and the coaching staff about what was happening vis-a-vis our on-field results, what we could do to change from a training perspective that would hopefully manifest itself into winning results. So there were those conversations that we had with Chris. Ultimately, it's Chris's responsibility to put out who's going to be on the game day roster, who's going to start, the substitution patterns, the tactics, the formation, and those types of things are the head coach's job. And we're respectful of that. But, Bill and myself, there's background in the sport and in the game where we provide opinions and share those opinions and things like that. Ultimately, we rely on the head coach to make those decisions, and then we support those decisions the best way possible, such that we can succeed and have the best chance at success. So those conversations happen, and it's a fair question, though.
Yeah, it's in an executive role, you provide the vision for what you want your team to aspire to. You provide the resources for your coaching staff. You provide the support, whatever they need to win. But at the end of the day, the coach is responsible for the tactics and the formation and the lineup, and we can question that. And there was never a scenario where we demanded anything. And Chris said no. I think that was one of your points there. But there was a point, I think after the Orlando game, I just said, hey, Chris, we just need to do whatever it takes to get results right now. And, he got it. He understood. But, it was, we had those 3 games in 7 days and lost 2 of them late. And then, didn't have a good performance against Cincinnati. And then obviously this result. And so the results were not there. And again, as I mentioned, as an executive role, you evaluate. And we needed to evaluate what was going on with the team and that a change was needed.
Next question goes to Dylan Butler from MLSsoccer.com.
Hey guys, I know it might be a tough question because I know the process is the process, but I'd imagine the search begins immediately. Do you anticipate this potentially to be a hire made during the season, or do you think you might have Javier kind of leading the way for the rest of this 2021 season?
Yeah, we're going to look to have an interim in place for the time being, and then as we move forward, see how that goes, and then make a more longer term decision as we see how it plays out.
We'll head next to Jeff Carlisle at ESPN.
Sorry if there's any background noise. I'm in an airport. My question is for Ali. To what degree does this coaching change impact the status of Jozy Altidore? Is he going to be allowed back into the team, or is his status going to remain the same?
We'll have those conversations with Jozy. I mentioned it's a good question, Jeff. I mentioned, made a comment to another journalist a couple of days ago that I think that there were some more increased conversations between Jozy and his representation of the last week. We'll probably have a conversation with Jozy tonight, as well as with, I spoke to Javier about Jozy earlier today to figure out what the path moving forward looks like. Stay tuned in terms of what next week looks like. Of course, we got the game on Wednesday, but then the game after that is on the 17th. We'll have to have first, I don't want to say anything before having a conversation with Jozy, but once we have those conversations with Jozy, then we'll be able to give you a better update as to what the next game looks like.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll head back to Neil Davidson of the Canadian Press.
Thank you, Nick. What responsibility do the players bear for this? And do you believe that changes in personnel are needed?
Look, at the end of the day, players play the game, and it's the individual battles on the field. It's the execution on the field, and certainly coaches are responsible for who they put on the field and what formations and style of play. But I think there's a collective disappointment, and I think amongst the players as well, that we have not performed well. And we have been too soft, especially defensively. We haven't executed on the offensive side of the ball. So yes, it hasn't been good enough on the field. And when you look at a situation like this, you can't make wholesale changes to your personnel. And so the decision was made that a new tactician possibly could give our current roster a better look and maybe a spark to get something out of them that was missing right now. But it's, right now we are going to look to the players to provide the answers on what they can do on the field to get results.
And just to piggyback on that, what I would say is that, we made the decision with Chris earlier today. And as much as there's a collective responsibility that I think all of us share, we're not going to be the type of club that starts to point the finger internally at this guy or at that person. I think we all need to point the finger at ourselves and ask ourselves, what can we do better? How can we improve? And that's from every player to the staff and each one of us, and everyone within the club has to look at his or herself to see what we can do to improve, to drive the club and the team to where it needs to be and to get results on the field.
We'll go back to Vic Ratter of TSN.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you very much. I come back to the aspect of Coach Armas on the field. Did any of the players, because from what the players said to us as a media, what Coach Armas said, did any of the players come to you, either of you, and say, this has got to change?
Did anyone? No. No one came forward saying we need a change.
Thank you, Vic. We'll go next to James Grossi.
Thanks again, Nick. It's a bit off topic, but I was hoping while we had you guys, we could get an update on the return to Ontario for the team to train and or play.
Yeah, we're returning on Thursday.
Thank you, James. We'll head back to John Molinaro. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Bill, I'm not sure if you want to give us any details, but I mean, the conversation you had with Chris today, I mean, how did that go? I mean, what was his response? I mean, how did this sort of conversation sort of unfold?
Yeah, I mean, Chris is a class act. He is a professional. He got it. He said he got it. He understood. He thanked us for the opportunity. It was emotional. It's very difficult because you see a man who's a good man and would do anything to get wins for this club, but it just wasn't happening. And that's when, again, as an executive of this club, you have to make really difficult decisions. And it's the fact that he stood there and he looked us in the eyes and he hugged us before he left and thanked us for the opportunity just tells you so much about who he is. And, I can't tell you I left that room in a good mood because it was really difficult to see Chris not succeed here. And again, difficult circumstances that we're under, but it just wasn't happening. And he understood it. He understood the decision. And he understood, and he was a class act. He was a class act on the way in, and he was a class act on the way out.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit. Bill, myself, and Chris, we met. I got to tell you, that was the, I don't think I've had in my professional career a feeling like that ever after a meeting. To Bill's point and to Chris's credit, of course, he's such a class act. He's such a absolute professional. And to deliver that news is not easy because, you got a guy that would give you the shirt off his back and would do whatever he could to help the team win. At the end of the day, we weren't winning. The results didn't get better than in so many ways. It got worse, unfortunately, which drove the decision. These decisions are so difficult, and they are so impactful and so meaningful because you have an organization and a group of people that are willing to do whatever it takes to try to drive results and to try to win. And I think our city and our fans, they want to win so badly as well, and they love the club. They love the team since day one. And so it makes those decisions that much more difficult. So it was a very, very difficult meeting. But I thought Chris handled that meeting with absolute class and professionalism. We know it will have impact within his family as well, because as if there's anything that we've learned through COVID, these jobs, and especially for the Canadian teams, they're 24/7, and you live it literally, and not just the individuals, the players and the staff, but also their families. And so, our hearts go out to Chris, his two boys, and his wife, Justine. But, unfortunately, the results weren't going our way. We had to make a decision, and this is what the business demands.
We'll go next to Laura Armstrong of the Toronto Star.
Hi, both. Thanks for the time. I just wanted to quickly clarify, Bill, on what you just said about returning to Ontario. Is that returning to Ontario for a brief spell of time? Or are you returning to play in Ontario? What are the logistics?
No, so the regulations allow us to come back home and train those that are fully vaccinated. So we will certainly take advantage of that. And look, it's been a long time. It's been a grind. We've been here for months on end. So we're really pleased that the border restrictions have eased. And so we'll be back on Thursday after the game against New England on Wednesday. About playing the games at home, we're still in some discussions there. But it seems, everything seems to be headed in the right direction. And so hopefully we'll have some good news on that end soon, but nothing affirmative.
And we'll head back to Joshua Cloak from The Athletic.
Thanks, Nick. Ali, when Chris was hired, you said, it's important to know how I see the game, and it's with energy. It becomes a way of working. It's a way of playing. It's a way of living. Given that this is a roster that is aging, some that have injury issues, I'm curious, moving forward for your next coach, do you believe it is important to stick to that kind of high-pressing, aggressive style, or do you think this roster is better suited to play a different style of game?
I think everything is about balance, Josh. We've talked about this before, where you have to have a balanced roster of players that are veteran, and players that are younger and on the come up, and then also players that are kind of in that mid-range. And I think we have a good balance of that, especially even if you looked at our roster now and you study it and analyze it, you'll see that. And so in that respect, there's quality. And even, if you talk to other GMs within the league, I think you'll get a sense that in terms of the roster and the composition of the roster, we feel good about. Now, it's also we'll call it a living and breathing document, in that it's something that you always try to improve on, and to look at and to analyze and to change based on, different variables, different factors, different situations that come up throughout the course of an entire season, and not just the MLS season, but also just the seasons in general, whether that's, spring, summer, fall, winter. We have to be ready. It's been challenging down here in Orlando, just adjusting to the heat and the humidity, and that's had an impact, I think, on our playing style, which has been a challenge. It's different, a little bit different in Toronto, but I think what we'll do is, as we do every day, we assess who we are, where we need to go, and what our objectives are, and then we make decisions that we feel will help us achieve those. And of course, we're going to have to bring in or hire a head coach for the long term that will help us achieve our goals, and we'll talk through the roster and talk through what needs to be done, and we'll do that at the right time.
And our final question here will go back to Mike Leach from 680 News. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks very much, Nick. Bill, this is for you. You say that the team is not yet able to play games at BMO Field. How hopeful are you that that July 17th game might be at BMO Field? Is it close to the line? And if that game isn't allowed to be at BMO Field, will you be back at Exploria?
We won't be back at Exploria. I'm optimistic, Mike. I think there are good discussions, and things with the pandemic are going in the right direction. You're seeing more and more things open up, and so I feel that the protocols that we have in place to host games at BMO Field is very strong, and I'm hoping that we can. This next week will be really important to kind of finalize those discussions and hopefully get a positive decision on that end. If we do have a backup plan, if we can't play at BMO Field in the U.S., I don't want to say where yet right now because we haven't finalized that, but we do have a backup.